Moms, I can't encourage you enough to make time for yourself by finding a moment of peace, encouragement, and reassurance, and would love to recommend two beautifully written devotionals written just for moms. Max Lucado's Grace for the Moment for Moms offers 50 devotionals filled with thoughtful messages of faith and God's grace for mothers. This devotional celebrates everything moms do and reminds you of how deeply loved and appreciated you are in God's eyes and in your families. And in Jesus Calling for Moms, Sarah Young shares devotions crafted to celebrate motherhood. Along with journaling prompts and uplifting reflections, this devotional invites moms to lean into God's guidance during every season of life. Give yourself or a mom you love the gift of comfort, faith, and a reminder of your incredible impact. Grace for the Moment for Moms and Jesus Calling for Moms are available now wherever books are sold. Okay, if you are a mom, especially of girls, I hope you know the name Kari Kampakis. And if not, allow me to introduce you. I had the chance to sit down with Kari for an interview a few years ago and have been dying to have her on the podcast because I know that you mamas will learn so much from her. She is the author of several books geared toward both moms and daughters to help them navigate life from a faith-based perspective. Her newest book is called Yours Not Hers, 40 Devotions to Stop Comparison and Love Your Life. You are going to love Kari. So let's jump in. Kari Kampakis is with us today, and I've been trying to make this happen for a while because I know that the people who listen to this podcast, you know, it's primarily a mom audience, and that they're so going to resonate with your message and your heart for specifically parenting girls and the journey that you've been on. And boy, are you qualified. 4 daughters, my goodness.
Well, I call it, I have a lot of material, so I don't know if I'm an expert on anything, but
Yeah, I was wondering about that the other day. I was thinking, you know, even in doing this, it's hard if you talk about mothering and parenting and all of that, you can't not bring up your kids, in my case, my boys. So
right.
do incidents ever happen in the house or conversations where they're like, we're going to end up a chapter in a book, you know, we're going to be on Mom's podcast next week?
Yeah, no, they're probably thinking that. I do try to, make the story more about me when I can, but it is nicer that they're older now because, like, I just finished writing a new book, and now I can say when my daughter was in 10th grade, something that I went through or struggled with as a mom, that I wouldn't want to identify one particular child, but nobody would know if it's 1 or 2 or 3 daughters. And so,
Yeah,
yeah, I
or
feel like,
4.
or 4, exactly. The older they get, it's easier to share more than I could when it's actually going on in the
Yeah.
time.
When you are introduced and, you know, you've done a ton of media, you've been on, you know, national talk shows and everything, but when you're introduced and some of the adjectives around that include words about being a parenting expert, is that intimidating?
Yeah, I mean, I hate to like correct anybody, but I do not call myself an expert at all. I mean, like I feel like I'm more of a resource, and I'm sure you probably relate as a mom
Yeah.
and that's why I really do try to share more about like my personal journey and what I'm learning through my kids or through situations we've faced. But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know if any parent calls himself an expert. I mean, I think we can be an expert at our job, but
No, I feel like
just
I'm
when I
on the
think
lower side of that.
yeah, I learned early on in parenting that the second I start to think I have something figured out, we're thrown into a new season or new situation, and I will be humbled. So
Yeah, no, it's so true. So not only do I want to talk about, you know, the book and one of many, but and the advice and all of that, but I really want to hear more about your story and how this
mm,
journey and, you know, the incredible doors that God has opened through this gift and talent that He's given you as a writer. But I love the fact that you kind of started this a little bit later. I mean, you weren't, you
mhm,
know, coming out of college writing for some well-renowned journal or something, but you
mhm.
always had a passion and a desire to write. So tell me a little bit about the story and how the ball kind of started rolling for you.
Yes, and that's something I feel like this is one difference between maybe my generation of moms and a lot of the new moms today, that we kind of slowly eased into things. And this definitely started as a hobby for me. I mean, honestly, it was a stress reliever for me because I just needed something to make me feel like myself again.
Yeah.
And that was one of the best pieces of advice I got when my kids were young, was like, have something separate from your children. And that could
Mhm.
be your tennis group, that could be your Bible club, something. And I always found that helpful, just to have something that could bring me joy, especially on those hard days when you're feeling
Yeah.
like a failure as a mom.
It's been
So
one of my biggest pieces of advice as well, as far as like always keep your foot in the door of
yes,
something that you love and that feeds your passion aside from your kids, because you're going to end
yes,
up very quickly like where I am right now. You're not quite
yeah,
there, you're really close, but all
yes.
four are, not only out of the nest, but out of college to own their own homes. Like they're in that stage. And I'm so glad
Hmm.
that, I kind of kept a little bit of a passion alive because now I'm able to use it in bigger ways.
Exactly, and it's like all of a sudden you have this capacity that you didn't have before when they were little.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
and so I do think that it's hard. I think there's a lot of pressure on young moms now to like, you've got to be a boss babe and have your own business and raise small kids. And I mean, I had some coffee with some young friends today and they've got little ones. And I'm like, your season of parenting is a lot harder than my season. And they
Mhm.
don't hear that a lot. A lot of people, especially in, teenagers and college kids, it's so much harder, but it is harder. The stress is bigger in a lot of ways, but I think we forget how it's just all consuming when they're little.
Yeah.
So when mine were small and I was staying home, I just needed something at night just to be my own. And so I joked that it was either that or a bottle of wine every night. So I was like, I'm like, okay, mommy needs her time. And so when my husband would get home from work, I would just write. And so I spent 7 years writing fiction. I thought I wanted to be a fiction writer, which I still would
Wow.
like to write a fiction book one day. So much rejection. And I look back now, I realize that it wasn't a waste, but it just felt like I was wasting my time. But
Mhm.
God was really developing me. He was really developing my heart for what I wanted to write about. And the prequel to that was like, I just always enjoyed writing growing up. And even in my corporate career, I did kind of more public relations writing, marketing
Mhm.
writing. And so I always enjoyed writing, but it wasn't until I became a mom that I was like, let me just see, what I can do just to, if I'm just sitting down at a computer, making up something, having fun.
Yeah.
So I did that for 7 years. A lot of doors almost opened and then they didn't. And I look back, I can see it all as a blessing, but it really forced me to kind of sharpen my skills. Meanwhile, my kids were growing up. And so, and then we had this year, I call it my year from hell. I mean, it was just, we had a tree fall in our house. That was the start. It was also my year of spiritual growth. I mean, just, tree fell in our house. We were okay, but we had that major renovation. I had two big scares with two of my children. Like, it's a miracle that, they were okay. One was an allergic reaction my daughter had. Another
Wow.
daughter had this big chest fall on her. Thank goodness they were both okay. But just things that really brought me to my knees and just
Mhm.
really brought my faith to the surface, even though I had gone to church my entire life and always called myself a Christian. But anyway, that really changed my heart when I wanted to write about. And so that really put me more into the faith world. And it was pretty soon after that, I wrote a blog post that went viral. And it was a blog post, just advice for teenage girls. And that was my first blog post to ever go viral. So that was fun. And it was about a month after all of that had died down that I heard from Thomas Nelson that they
Wow.
expressed interest in turning it into a book. And so
Yeah.
I would find out later, everything is just so much in God's timing. I would find out later that it had been 10 years since they had a book for teenage girls. So they were in the market to create something in the first place. And then one of their editors had seen my article and it just aligned with what their values were. So that was a door that opened. Yeah.
When that, article went viral, at the time, were you even thinking, like, because I think any writer or anyone who's trying to figure out, you wanna find your niche and what it was. At the time, did you
Hmm.
even know that your niche was gonna be on parenting or advice to girls or that kind of thing, or was that
Yeah.
what stirred that?
That's a great question. I knew that when I had my fourth daughter, I was like, something is going on here. Like, I remember going to a writing conference. I was writing fiction at the time. And I remember they had this conference on writing for the Christian publishing.
Mhm.
And somebody there was talking about a woman who wrote for mothers and daughters, and she was kind of retiring out of it. She wanted to spend time being a grandmother. And I remember God stirring this desire in my heart, like, I want to do that, but I don't know how to get started because
Yeah.
in nonfiction, you really have to have more of a platform. Whereas in
Mhm.
fiction, if you have a fiction book that's really good, you don't have to have a platform. You don't have to have an audience. Like,
True. Mhm.
somebody will publish it. But in nonfiction, you have to have a platform. And I didn't have that. But I remember that feeling, that sense of like, I feel like I'm supposed to do something with mothers and daughters. Plus, I grew up with sisters. Like, girls have just been the theme throughout my life. And so, yeah, so when that article went viral, I remember thinking, something's going on here because I got so many emails, like dads were emailing me, I wish I had this in a book to give to my daughter, or I'm saving this to put my daughter's like her memory box, just things that I want her to know. So I remember thinking, okay, I might write a book about this because people were mentioning that. And that God was already stirring that heart desire in me. And so when I was actually formally invited to do it, and it's so funny because I remember seeing that email thinking, this has got to be a joke. Like my life never works out like this. Like just a, of course I knew Thomas Nelson was. I've been in bookstores before and I'd wanted to like, how do I get in with them?
Yeah.
And it's just so funny. But like I said, I didn't know all the things going on behind the scenes. And so
Yeah.
it felt like an overnight opportunity, but really it had been 7 years in the making.
Right. And am I correct that that book was the 10 Ultimate Truths that girls should know?
Yes. Yes.
And that was my first introduction to you as an author. At the time, I was leading. Of course, I'm the mom of boys. You're a mom of
Mm.
girls, but I was helping to lead an eighth grade girls Bible study when my son was in the eighth grade, and I think it was my desire to be around girls, and
Oh.
like just I wanted to be able to feel like I could use some of my really tough experiences
Mhm.
growing up to impact other young girls, and so your book was my resource of what I would speak into them. And we used the book as our
Oh.
guide. And so that was the first time, my first introduction to you as an author. Those 10 rather simplistic truths,
Mhm.
and I still, I want to talk about the new book, of course, but the core of it all to me is as a girl mom, you need to own that book, that original
Oh,
book from
thank
Kari.
you.
That
Thank
has
you.
such a powerful message for young girls. And I think, and even with the new book called Yours, Not Hers, it's so funny. You sent me a preview copy of it and I got to see it
Mhm.
before it was even out. And I'm reading and I'm flipping through and I'm like, wait, is this for teens or is this for women my age?
I know. I know. It really is. I mean,
There's
and
not
that's
a
what
whole lot of difference in
there's
the
not.
advice that we need
Mm-mm.
now than we needed then,
I
right?
know. I know. That's what I tell girls. I'm like, you think you grow up and master these things and you don't. I mean, there's always going to be some level of struggle there, but it helps
Mhm.
them to know that.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And even, relationships with your girlfriends and some of the,
Yes.
I still feel jealousy over some things. But
Mhm.
why this particular book and this particular topic?
Yeah, it was interesting. So I wrote those first 2 books for teenage girls, and that was fun. Like, my daughters were young too. My oldest daughter was in 5th grade when I wrote it, and she was in 6th grade when I released it. That daughter's now a senior in college. So it just shows you, I mean, that was over 10 years ago. So, yes, I wrote those 2 books for teenage girls, and that really developed my heart for teenage girls because, once you're writing about something or doing something, your eyes are just, like, open for, like, what I
Yeah.
wanna write about next? What do I need to know? So, not to say that my heart wasn't with the moms, but like if I had to choose one audience or another, I wanted to write for the girls.
Mhm.
And then my daughters actually became teenagers, and and I was like, "This is hard." And one of my daughters and I, we really started fighting, and I was doing all the things wrong, all the common mistakes I think we do as our kids become teenagers. And so I've really spent a few years trying to find my balance and trying to parent a teenage daughter and also love a teenage daughter.
Mm.
And it's funny, I read all these books trying to help myself that I would later realize would be my research. And so that launched me into having a heart for moms. And that's when I wrote those 2 books for moms, Love Her Well and More Than a Mom. And so really after I'd written those 2 books, fast forward, my daughter's now in college, and I was taking my first daughter to college. And all the while, I've always wanted to write a devotional. It's just kind of been one of those hidden desires in my heart. And at several points, I tried to start it, and I couldn't. It just wouldn't come. The ideas wouldn't
Mhm.
come. And so I was dropping my daughter off at college and, hugging her goodbye, and I'm crying and she's teary, but she's ready just to get on with it and go have, Chick-fil-A on the lawn with all of her new friends that she's meeting in the dorm. And so I just had the strongest urge as I was leaving. I was like, oh, I just want a book to give her. I just want a book to put on her bedside table that she might not read
Mhm.
for 3 months. But if she's having a hard day or she's up at 2 o'clock in the morning, she could just open it up and remember some of those truths I taught her. So I came home from that day, and that was really my motivation. Like, okay, I want a book I can send with my girls to college, just 40 different topics that, speaking to all the things that I've been telling them over time, those little reminders from mom. So that
Yeah.
was really the heart behind the book. And then, it really went back to comparison because I think that, even for moms, the new moms behind us, we're really the last generation that had a foot in both worlds of parenting. We parented before social media, and then we've also parented with social media. So
Oh,
we know
that's
the
really good. Yeah.
difference, I
Yeah,
mean,
I hadn't thought
I
about it.
think about it all the
Mm.
time. Like we're the last generation that knows what it's like to have one foot in both worlds. And obviously, there are good things that come from social media. We wouldn't be doing this interview if it wasn't for that.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
there are, but we know what everybody's missing. And we know,
Mhm.
the day it used to be, you could just compare yourself to the people in your immediate circle. For moms, it'd
Mhm.
be like the moms in your play group or the moms at the gym or wherever you're
Right.
going. Now it's every person on the planet, and it can really do a number on your confidence. And
Yeah.
so,
My mind is kind of blown right now because I've just never thought about the fact that you're right. Like the young moms raising kids right now that grew up with
mhm,
social media and already know and are in that world and had the pressure of, you know, they don't really probably have that same perspective because we're
mhm.
kind of it makes us sad to
Yes, right,
see that
right,
they're not experiencing a world without the pressures that social media, for example, brings, because we
yeah,
know what it was like to grow up without that. But younger
right,
moms don't. That's so
right.
interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting, and I think that's a really important perspective that we can give them
Mm,
because and I think that's why they're so confused, they're so overwhelmed, they're so inundated with the influencers or experts telling them what to do, but then they're giving them totally conflicting advice. So you're like, who do I listen to?
yeah, yeah, exactly. I love that. I didn't realize that the yours, not hers was written, again, out of motivation for you to say these words to your daughters. Because
Mhm.
I've heard you say before that, like the 10 Truths book, that was kind of your love letter of what you wanted your daughters to know as well. I mean, they've really
Yes.
kind of helped to instigate, the specificity of these books is really interesting.
Yes, yeah. I guess one thing I've always kind of felt in the back of my mind is that if I'm going to be taking time away from my family and devoting my energy into something, I
Mhm.
want it to be something that benefits my family. And so that's one of the reason I've loved writing for mothers and daughters. I feel like it does align with being a mom.
For
And
sure.
as especially as I'm on the road and I'm meeting moms or having conversations like this, like truly the best wisdom. I mean, it's not always from the experts. A lot of times it's like from other moms,
Oh,
just
yeah.
what God has revealed to somebody else. And so I'm constantly learning from other mothers and other parents. And then
Mhm.
I'm like, I want to be a better mom too. So it's really selfish. I'm like, I want
Yeah,
to,
that's kinda how I feel about this podcast, is the wisdom I'm gaining from moms. A lot of them are steps ahead of me, me as a
yes,
parent raising someone in the entertainment industry, and these other moms that I talk to have kinda been there and walked that road, and I just didn't start this with the intention of or realization of the fact that I was the one who was gonna learn so much.
yes, I know it is. It's like God is so good in that sense that you feel like I'm truly getting back more than what I can give to anyone.
Spring is here, and that means prom season for many of my mom friends, or maybe you're even a mom with a son or daughter getting married soon. Well, I have the best tip for you: Suit Shop. We learned about Suit Shop while planning Connor's wedding last year, and we're so impressed with the quality and the service. With Suit Shop, you can purchase a suit or a tux for less than what you'd pay to rent in most cases. That's right, you pay less and keep the suit or tux. I wish I'd known this when my boys were in high school. Choose from classic or more modern styles and fits. You can shop using the links in our show description and use the code GIFMM for Got It From My Mama to receive a free tie with purchase. From proms to fitting an entire wedding group, just visit suitshop.com and thank me later. It's official. I've got all my girlfriends hooked on bare-faced toning pads. I knew they'd be thanking me once they tried these powerhouse treatment pads that are packed with skincare acids, antioxidants, and hydrating ingredients to tackle dullness, rough texture, and breakouts. They enhance the performance of all my other products, and I've noticed my makeup just goes on a little more smoothly. If you're ready to switch up your skincare routine, try pairing them with Overachiever, bare-faced 10-in-1 serum for a simple but effective routine. Don't forget to grab 15% off your first order with the code MOMMA15, that's MOMMA 15, at barefaced.com. Whenever Tucker and I go for a walk at the park, people always comment on his beautiful coat. He is a handsome boy. We bathe him in the Coat Defense Sensitive Skin Shampoo, and it really helps to keep his coat soft, shiny, and fresh. In between, we use the Coat Defense Daily Preventative Powder. This powder acts as a dry shampoo and actually repels dirt, and it eliminates odor. It comes in a refillable, convenient shaker, and Tucker gets so excited when it's time for his brush and his powder. He stays cleaner, fresher, and I'm just a happier dog mama thanks to Coat Defense. Try it out and let me know what you think. You can visit coatdefense.com and receive 15% off your purchase when you use the code MOMMA15. That's MOMMA 15. So this is the cover of the book so that everyone can see it. And then it is a devotion book. And of all your books, this is the first time you've done an actual devotion book, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Hmm.
What was the challenge of that as a writer compared to maybe some of the other books that you've put out?
I think it's not having one theme. There's not one central theme. Whereas in a
Yeah.
book, you're tying, and I don't know, that can be hard. It can be harder in some ways and easier in some ways. And so, really, it's like I'm writing all of it, but I'm writing each one individually. But then, I thought it was pretty finished, and then I went back to edit, and I'm like, something is not flowing from one devotional to another. So, in some ways, it was easier because I could get closure more easily.
Mhm.
When you're writing a book, there might be one chapter that takes me 3 weeks to write. There might be another chapter that takes me a month to write. And so
Yeah.
it is sometimes that lack of closure. It's kind of hard because I'm the personality. I'm like, I want to keep going until it's done.
Right.
And so, with a book, it takes a long time to finish. So it's easier to do a devotional in that sense. I could sit down like, okay, I'll write for 3 hours today, and it might take me 2 or 3 days to write one. But yeah, probably just the lack of a theme, but making sure it all kind of kept tying into that core theme of comparison.
So
Mhm.
did you just, as you got ideas, kind of keep notes of what different days could be about? Like, tell me a little
Yes.
bit about your process.
Yeah, that's a great, like I said, I actually started this book after my first two books for teens. I started writing a devotional for teens. So I really had a little bit of an outline there. And I think I started with maybe 150 topics, if I'm being honest.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I also I also had like certain verses, like, oh, I love this Bible verse. I'd love to put that in there. So I always kind of have notes. And then also my phone, I just keep notes of everything. And it might be, somebody shares something their dad always said, or just like a little tidbit of wisdom or an article that I love. I always just keep notes in my phone of my favorite things. And so that helps me so that when I sit down, I'm not really ever sitting down to a totally blank page. I always have some kind of thought or prompt or inspiration that I'm starting with. And so, really, I think over time, I just kind of added to that document. I tried to start writing that devotional after the second teen book came out. It just wouldn't take. And it was soon after that I got the idea for Love Her Well. So that totally took me on a different course to start writing for moms. But in the back of my mind, I wanted to get back to that devotional.
Yeah.
So I think it was kind of cool because by the time I actually was able to do it, and I'm like, I'm going to write this devotional. Like I said, my daughter was in college. I had that personal motivation. My hope was to write it and have it finished by the time my second daughter graduated from high school. But it actually it's coming out by the time that my third daughter is graduating from high school.
Okay.
So it
So
took
the fourth
longer.
daughter is what grade?
And the fourth daughter is in ninth grade.
Ninth grade. So you still
Mhm.
got you still got some tough years.
Yes, yes, yes. Although
So
she's the easiest of all. I mean, I don't know if it's the youngest. I think she has just observed everything, and she knows what will and won't fly with mom and dad. So
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Or you've gotten a little bit like,
yeah,
chillax on what was a big deal with the first may not be with
true.
the fourth, right?
Yes, exactly,
Co
exactly.
combination of both. Tell me about how you kind of managed the traveling because with the success with the books led to lots of speaking engagements and,
Mhm,
of course, women's ministry is kind of its own thing, and so
mhm.
you had opportunities to visit lots of churches and conferences and events and things. How did you, manage all of that when you look back, particularly when they were younger and the ball was really rolling and the success was coming in the books?
Yes, that's a great question. I think about this all the time. I feel like God was really gracious to me because I didn't really know in the beginning how to set boundaries. But I really feel like in every season, He was giving me the invitations enough that I could handle. So the mistake I made though, when the book first came out, I did not realize how wiped out I would feel after a speaking event. And so
Mm.
it was hard. And I had a season of like, I'd overcommitted for a couple of months, and I'd come back from one speaking event and go to another one. And, you're kind of on that high of releasing a book. And finally, I asked my friend Sophie Hudson, who also writes books, and she's ahead of me. And I asked her one time, I'm like, how do you juggle writing books? Because I was writing a new book at the time, and also speaking events. And she told me, she's like, I do it in seasons. If I'm writing, I'm not speaking. And if I'm speaking, I'm not writing. So that was a game changer for me, especially as I was doing this while my kids were growing up, was
Mhm.
that like when I was working on a book, I took very few speaking invitations. And then when the book came out, I would do kind of a speaking season, but I would not be writing a lot. And
Okay.
that I was like, I just think that can be applied to so many different fields. And
Yeah, it can.
I was able to tell people, I'm so sorry, this is not a speaking season for me,
Mhm.
but please check back. But really, the good thing is I'd learned my limits, and I'd learned like, okay, I can travel maybe every other week, like twice a month out of town. That's really my limit. And so it always was pretty steady. And I always felt like I was spending more time writing than I was speaking. And then COVID shut everything down. And that's when I
Right.
released my 2 books for moms, was during COVID. But,
They
you know,
did they both come out during COVID?
they both did, yeah. The first
Oh.
one came out in August 2020, and honestly, it was probably my favorite book launch. I mean, it was I was like I was going walking every day. It was the most stress-free book launch because I couldn't travel. I mean, I really couldn't do
And
that
people
much.
have plenty of time to read, so
They
they're
had plenty
probably
of time to
buying the
read.
books.
Yes, it was my daughter's senior year. Like, it was really fun, and I was working on the next mom book. And so there wasn't a lot of speaking during that period. And I was surprised that I kind of missed it a little bit because they say that there are writers who speak and then speakers who write. And I've always considered myself a writer who speaks. And I always knew, like, if I had to choose one or the other, I feel like I'm really a writer at the core.
I was gonna
But
ask if that was a little bit of a learning curve for you to feel
yes,
comfortable.
yes, definitely. And to kind of figure out my system, at the time I would write a new talk each time I went somewhere. And I've gotten so much smarter in all of these things. I now have a menu. I have like, 4 talks for girls, 4 talks for moms. I have one I can do for a fundraiser. Like, I kind of know my
Okay.
limits. I
Yeah.
know, I know that I like to get home quickly to my family. So if I'm driving, I like to be within 3 hours of Birmingham. If I'm flying, I like, something that's a pretty short, manageable flight. So if I
Mm,
fly out one day, I can fly home the next day. So
yeah,
you do you learn that. And then it really was after COVID that I started getting a lot more invitations. But as my daughters got older and were going to college, I mean, I had a lot more time. So it
yeah.
really was kind of nice. It was a way to fill that time. Even my daughters who were at home, were doing activities after school. So, they weren't home until 5 or 5:30 anyway. So if I'm leaving early one morning, right after they go to school, and getting back the next afternoon before they get home from school, I didn't feel like I was missing that
Yeah, it
much.
wasn't that bad. Just had to be
Yeah.
somewhat strategic in how you did it.
Yes.
Yeah. So all of
Yes.
us moms deal with that mom guilt of trying to miss something but juggle things. And I'll never, one, Connor won't let me forget, but two, I was, such a bleacher mom there for every baseball game. And the one I missed for work, I'm not
Okay.
saying it's the only game I missed, but I missed a game first time he hit a home run in middle school,
Right.
experienced the whole thing. And of
Right.
course it had to be like that game.
Of course, of course.
Right? So,
Yes.
I mean, has there also been just the reality of some sacrifice involved with things that you
Yes.
couldn't be at everything?
Yes, exactly. No matter how well you try to plan it out, like, there will be something. For example, my oldest daughter, when she decided in 10th grade she was going to stop cheering. And so, and you don't know these things. You're like, I didn't know to even savor this football season more than I did because
Yeah.
I thought we'd have 2 more years. And so I'd already planned an event to Baton Rouge. This was probably the first time it happened. And they planned a last minute pep rally like the same day I was in Baton Rouge. And I just, I had to miss it. So
Yeah.
that was hard. And, it makes you appreciate your mom friends because I had a good mom friend. We would always carpool. And she's a working mom. And she took all these pictures at that pep rally. I didn't ask for it, but she sent me all of these,
Oh, yeah.
videos and clips and pictures. And I just really appreciated
Yeah,
that.
knowing it would be hard for you to be away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
there was another one. My other daughter, who's a senior this year, it was my favorite pep rally. It's their neon pep rally. They do every fall. And I mean, I had planned my speaking event, like, I'd gotten the pep rally schedule back in the spring from our dance coach. And so I planned my whole speaking schedule around her pep rallies and her games so I wouldn't miss anything. And of course, they changed the date of the pep rally, the school
Yeah.
did. And
And
so
nobody checked with you and your
nobody checked with
schedule,
me.
right?
I know, exactly. I mean, but I'm like, this is what moms go through. But it was
It is.
kind of interesting. I think I was getting in at like 10 o'clock to Birmingham, and the pep rally was starting at 11:30. And I'm like, it'll be an act of Congress. It'll be a miracle if I can, get off the
Yeah.
plane, no delays, nothing, get there in time. But I got there in time, as I was like, I enjoyed that pep rally like never before, just
Aw.
because I realized it could have easily turned out differently if I'd had a delay or something happen.
Yeah, for sure. What are some of the opportunities that have come your way that you would have never imagined? Like imagine telling, middle school Carrie that one day she was going to meet this person or get to travel here or take part in this. What comes to mind when I ask you that?
Probably the most unexpected blessing, something that has been really fun. And I say this because it's probably the only thing that has ever impressed my girls. Like, my daughters are not that impressed by anything I do, like, they're just kind of like, that's just mom's job. But out of the blue, I had Bethany Hamilton's team reach out to me and ask me to be part of her mother daughter program and speak to a group of moms and girls via Zoom. And so that was like their childhood hero. I mean, like, they dressed up as Bethany Hamilton for Hero
The
Day.
Soul
And
Surfer movie with
yes, Soul
Ruthie.
Surfer came out when they were little. Like, that was they're like, "What?" And I'll never forget them coming home from school, and I was able to tell them, like, "Yeah, I'm gonna connect with Bethany Hamilton." And, they asked me to be part of her mother-daughter program, so they were just, like, blown away by that.
Yeah, yeah.
So, that was
And
really
again, that
fun.
was special to you because you knew that
Mhm.
your girls would be like, "Oh, wait a
Yes.
minute, maybe mom is cool," you know?
Yes, exactly. It's like, a few maybe you might not listen to me, but there are some other people that think I have something valuable to say.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I got to interview, Patrick Mahomes' mom last year right before the Super
Wow.
Bowl and flew to the house and did the interview, and in my job through the years, I've done some really cool things, but, like, that's one of the only ones that comes to mind that they've ever just been like, "Our kid they're a tough audience, they're hard to impress."
They are hard. I was like, "If you ever get too big-headed, just go let your kids humble you a little bit." And
Yeah, that's so
yeah.
true. So tell me what's next. I mean, am I feeling maybe an empty nesting mom support book coming up at
Ah.
some point or
I don't know. I do have a new book for moms coming out in the fall.
Oh, you do?
Yes, I've never done it before. I will never do it again, releasing 2 books in 1 year, but I do have a new book for moms I'll be, announcing and sharing more on soon, but it really is just what I would tell the younger moms, like, looking back on 20 years of parenting,
Yeah.
that just some things the 10 things I probably would have focused on in raising daughters,
Mm,
and that's really my heart now. I feel like I don't know if you're like this in your job, but a lot of the people that I'm connecting with that I feel like have started following me in the last year or 2 are the really young moms with little kids,
yeah.
and it's hard. They're up against totally different challenges than we did, so I really have a heart for that generation and just trying to, like, pass on. I'm like, they are so hungry for our advice, and I tell my friends, like, "We don't have to be experts, we don't have to have all the answers," like, they're just hungry for anything that can help them
Yes.
navigate parenting.
Absolutely. I was at a dinner this past weekend and someone said this. I'm sure I've heard this before, but I just thought this was interesting. But, talking about the tough days of parenting. And I made the comment, I said, you know what? So one of the things that has surprised me is that even though my kids are older now, 27, 24, like I don't worry any less than I did when they were younger. And I thought I
Mhm.
might kind of outgrow that a little bit. And I
Right.
haven't. And someone said, little kids come with little problems, big kids come with big problems. And I thought,
Yes.
wow, that's really true.
Yes, I know. I've heard that before too, and
Yeah.
it makes me think of even my dad, like, if I'm going to an event, he would get upset if I was driving at night, and I'm like, "It
Yes.
doesn't end," 50
Yeah.
years old, and he's still getting upset with
He's
me.
still like, let me
Yeah,
know you made it okay. Yeah.
exactly,
Exactly.
exactly.
Exactly. Well, congratulations on this one. Yours,
Thank
Not
you.
Hers, again, devotional book, and it's interactive. It's got the Q&A and that type of thing. This is such a great gift for mothers or grandmothers to give their young daughters. But again, don't discount flipping through it yourself because I was like, oh, I needed to hear this about comparison today.
Oh, thank
Yeah,
you.
and it's beautiful, and I love that you're just always actively writing and thinking about what your audience needs to hear next, not just coming up with an interesting topic, but where are like the next book that's going to come out, where are these young moms in this journey? What did they need to hear that's going to encourage them in a positive way? So
Yeah, I know. I'd love to hear what are you hearing in your work? What do you think?
yeah, and I definitely feel like that's like what you mentioned, a big thing of encouraging them that
Mhm.
I did a post, it's one of the more popular posts that we've done, but it was kind of like my message to young moms in raising boys. Like those days, I remember just dwelling too much on, oh, is this going to be the last time this? And oh, this is so sad and oh, this is going
Yes.
fast and their childhood is over and that part is hard. But let me tell you the adult days are really good too.
Yes.
And that intentional hug or phone call means more now than it did when they were 16, right?
Yes.
Because as an adult, they're so busy with all the things going on. And while there's very difficult, days that part of the empty nesting thing, it's also just a new relationship. And
Yeah,
it's just different, but it's still really sweet.
it is.
And, just I'm so thankful for it. But I think young moms or those, middle school, high school, they need to know that, the going to college and all that is tough,
Yes.
but it's still going to be really sweet, just in a different way.
Yeah, I agree. That I was telling my young mom friends earlier today that, and I see it with especially a lot of my friends, it's their first child going to college, that they're so sad. And I'm like, I was there too. Like, you can't see any blessings then because all you feel is the loss and the change in your family.
Mhm.
But then they go and you're like meeting their roommate and the moms, and your world it's not really shrinking, it's really expanding because of
Yep.
them going off. And
Yeah.
there's so many new blessings on the other side, but you can't see it when you're
Right,
in the
right.
middle of it. Yeah.
And I think what also is really helpful for those moms, maybe this is the year they are sending one to college or something. But I remember being, it was kind of funny because senior year, I led the senior moms Bible study and just guided it and that kind of thing. And I really thought like some of them were just messy, like crying every day and all things. And I'm like, I think I'm handling this pretty good. And then like those 3 days before it was time to go move them
Oh,
in.
yeah.
Oh, I was like curled up.
I know.
I had
It
one of
hits
those
you.
t-shirt quilt blankets made, kind of depicting his whole childhood and t-ball and
Uh-uh.
plays he was in and all that. And he's packing and he's looking for this blanket I had made for
Oh.
him to take to college. And I'm literally like curled up in the bed with it. Like, can I just hang on to it for a couple of weeks? It was pitiful. We laugh about it now, but at the
Right.
time.
Yeah. And he's
But
like,
then when
"Mom, I
we
need my blanket." Yes.
Yes, but then when I took him to college, when you saw how happy they
I
were
know.
and
I
the
know.
new friends they were making, I'm like, "How could I feel anything but joy for this kid?" You
I
know?
know. And it's you don't believe I remember hearing the older moms say that if, they're so happy, you're just happy for them.
Yeah.
And I could not believe that when I was a young mom, but it is true.
It is. It is so true. So true. Well, this has been fun, Kari. I really
Oh,
enjoyed getting to talk to you and just to get to know you. We got to meet in person, spend a little bit of time together previously. So I knew that you
yeah.
were a mom that my audience was going to love to hear from. So thank you.
Thank
And
you.
congratulations on the new book, too.
Thank you, Jennifer. It's always so fun to be with you.
Thank you.
Kari is fantastic. I've so enjoyed getting to know her and now call her friend. All of her books are fantastic. The newest one, Yours Not Hers, How to Stop Comparison and Love Your Life. That one is available wherever books are sold. I'm going to put a link to the book specifically in the show notes so that it is easy for you to find and order. Hey, thanks for supporting and just joining us every week for the podcast. It means so much, and I hope to see you right back here next week. It's official. I've got all my girlfriends hooked on bare-faced toning pads. I knew they'd be thanking me once they tried these powerhouse treatment pads that are packed with skincare acids, antioxidants, and hydrating ingredients to tackle dullness, rough texture, and breakouts. They enhance the performance of all my other products, and I've noticed my makeup just goes on a little more smoothly. If you're ready to switch up your skincare routine, try pairing them with Overachiever, bare-faced 10-in-1 serum for a simple but effective routine. Don't forget to grab 15% off your first order with the code MOMMA15, that's MOMMA 15 at barefaced.com.